3T1JTUG, and by phone at 646-558-8656, webinar ID 970-2513-4574 to act on the following item, committee action only. For required password, contact public testimony at newhavenct.gov. OR 2020-0024, ordinance amendment, amending Article 2, noise control ordinance, to require the owner or operator of any refuse collection mobile noise source to provide any global positioning system, GPS, data in his or her possession that is relevant to a credible allegation of a violation of Article 16, Section 17-129C, upon request by the city's chief of police or designee. Per order, Honorable Charles Decker, Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. This item is on file and available in the office of the City Clerk, room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut, 06510. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY TDD. Public can view the meeting at https://bit.ly/3T1JTUG or listen by phone at 646-558-8656, webinar ID at 970-2513-4574. The password to listen by phone only is 8777-8333. Good evening, colleagues. I will start this meeting first by calling the roll, and then I'm going to explain what we have in front of us today, and then we'll move into committee action. Let me just pull up my roll sheet. Alder Furlow.
Present.
Alder Ferrara Santana. Alder Douglas.
Here.
Alder Morrison.
Here.
Alder Marchand.
Here.
Alder Brackeen. Alder Decker is here as well. I also recognize Alder Salvatore DeCola is here with us this evening, as is Alder Abby Roth and Alder Eli Sabin. That appears to be it for now. And Alder Ron Hurt, you're on camera, so that's why I got tricked up. If colleagues who are not on this committee would please go off camera, just so there's no confusion, that would be great. But welcome, Alder Hurt. There we go. Okay, so what we have before us this evening, members of the committee, is the GPS ordinance that we have heard a handful of times now. If you'll refresh your memory, last month we had a discussion about the ordinance, but we did not receive the red line substitute amendment until our meeting had already started, basically. And so that ordinance amendment has now gone out. So I will just try to briefly summarize what it does. So just as a refresher, the purpose of this GPS amendment to begin with is we already have a noise ordinance that sets the hours that private trash haulers can operate in our city. So those hours are not what's at question. What's in question is whether or not that ordinance is enforceable. As currently written, the law requires basically a city official to witness the infraction, which, if you think about that, that would mean that the city official would have to be, standing on the street corner of Orange and Willow at 2:45 in the morning, watching, this hauling taking place off hours. So what our colleagues, Alder Sabin and Alder Roth, and Alder Douglas and Alder Hurt have brought to us is an ordinance which basically requires these hauling companies to have GPS trackers in their vehicles, so that if there's a credible allegation of them operating off hours, that the GPS data can show basically whether or not the haulers were actually in a place that the witness says they were. So that's the basic ordinance. Last month, we heard about a couple of amendments, which again, we didn't vote on because we didn't actually have them in front of us until late in the meeting. But the changes in this proposed substitute language essentially do two major things based on feedback from our previous committee meeting. The first is that it makes clear that this ordinance applies to the entire city. I believe that Alder Roth and Alder Sabin had testified in our public hearing that this was a major concern in their wards with their constituents in the downtown area. And we got several letters from residents of those neighborhoods affirming that. So, but despite that, we wanted to make clear that this applies to the entire city and it's not a special downtown only law. The second thing was that it made clear that any fines that are imposed for violation of the ordinance are imposed on the hauling company, not on the driver, him or herself. We're not interested in penalizing, individual drivers, but that the fines go to the company. So those were the two changes in the substitute amendment. We received a third change this week based on a line of questioning from some of our colleagues on this committee last week, which basically says that originally the substitute amendment said that the chief of police or his or her designee was the person who could actually put this into effect. We received a small but meaningful amendment tonight, which clarifies that it's not just the chief of police, but also the chief administrative officer of the city or his or her designee is also capable of enforcing this. So those are the changes that have been submitted to us. So, and I'd like to recognize our Rosa Farah Santana, who has joined us, who is a member of this committee. So as the notice said, tonight we have just committee action. This is not a public hearing. We're not taking public testimony. We're not taking further questions or comments from members of the public or the administration. We have an item before us. We can move said item, we can deliberate it, we can propose amendments, but that is what's before us this evening.
Mr. Chair, this is Alder Adam Marchand.
Alder Marchand.
I move the item.
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. Discussion on the item. Alder Morrison.
This item, this is an item that it interests me in the sense that I didn't realize that this was such an issue for constituents, but on two different sides of the problem. And so, as I said during this process, during our different meetings, I talked about the fact of how, trash haulers maybe starting a little bit earlier helps the traffic movement when people are trying to commute to work, because you got the buses, you got all these different factors that you're fighting with. But last month's testimony really struck me when it wasn't just an hour or so picking up the trash. You're talking 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And that really changes things, because now you're talking about disrupting the sleep of individuals. And when people don't get rest, that can function throughout the whole, day, the whole life. And so, and then to also hear testimony that some of the trash haulers said that they don't basically give a hoot what the ordinance says. They're going to pick up trash whenever they want, because who's going to stop them? And so I had to, for me, balance those things out. But I really feel that it's very important that we look at this sleep deprivation, and that we do look at putting these GPSs on these trucks, because people need to respect people, respect communities. And as alders, we do have a responsibility to make sure that people feel respected. And so I just wanted to make that statement. I am in support of this item. And I hope that, the trash haulers will be able to respect the ordinance because, people need to sleep. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. I recognize Alder Marchand, followed by Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I just want to express my support for the overall aims and goals of this ordinance. And I look forward to hearing more about the actual substitute language. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Alder Furlow, followed by Alder Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the sponsors for submitting this. It shows that the alders are doing their job to support, to deal with quality of life issues throughout our city. This has spanned across 4 alders who came before this committee and spoke because of the effect that this issue has had in their wards. And so having reading through the material and speaking with the sponsoring alders, I do give my full support to this ordinance and to its important amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Alder Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, I would like to reiterate what my colleagues have voiced on this issue and this concern. Being one of the makers of this, added to being one of the makers of this ordinance, I want to commend the 2 alders who really pushed this through. I think you guys did a tremendous job. We took a lot of time. It was a lot of time that we anticipated pushing this through, but I'm really glad that it's taken place and it's coming into fruition. And I'd just like to say thank you to all of the colleagues who had a hand in this. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Douglas. Are there further comments from members of this committee? Keeping in mind that we do have, unless I'm very much mistaken, we would still need to move the substitute language if we chose to do so. If there aren't any comments on the overall, then perhaps such a motion would be appropriate.
I make a motion that we accept the substitute amendment as written.
I second.
So there's been a motion which has been seconded to amend this item by substitution. I assume Alder Morrison, based on the red line language that we've received in our emails.
Yes.
Great. Is there discussion on this motion to amend? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the part that that seems to be important is as you mentioned, the red line. In our previous meetings, we were concerned about the police enforcement or the enforceability of this amendment. And I think by adding on the chief administrative officer or their designee broadens the ability for this ordinance to be enforced. And so I'm glad for this very simple change, but it makes a big difference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Further discussion? Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm grateful for your efforts and the efforts of our Vice Chair. I know that also Alder Sabin was very involved in discussions leading up to the formulation of this substitute amendment. So I commend all of you for your hard work. And I'm glad that we've empowered additional city officials to play a part in enforcing the ordinance, which I think enhances the ability of the city to enforce the new restrictions. So, no, the existing restrictions with the new technology. So I'm in support of the substitute amendment, which includes that and the other portions that Mr. Chair described before we open deliberations. And I encourage colleagues to vote to support the substitute amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, let's vote. I will call the roll. Alder Furlow.
Aye. Yes. In favor.
Furlow is in favor. Alder Ferrara Santana.
Yes.
Alder Douglas.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
We don't have Alder Brackeen, and I vote in favor as well. So now we're back to the item as amended. Discussion on the item as amended. Seeing none from the committee, I will just say it has been quite a journey getting here. I commend our colleagues who brought this item before us. I think it was Alder Brackeen who last month said this is constituent service sort of in one of its purest forms, and I am inclined to agree. I think that additionally, it makes laws that, my predecessors on this board, perhaps some of you were on the board when the original ordinance passed, I'm not sure, but take laws that in this board's wisdom, we saw fit to pass and make them actually enforceable, which I think is a laudable goal. And I also do want to one last time thank Mr. Changaris from the Trade Association for the waste haulers who, I imagine if we vote favorably, is not going to like the outcome of the vote, but throughout the process was a collaborative partner in getting us to the finish line. And I do truly hope that this can be the start of a more collaborative relationship with, with his association going forward, because, there may be other issues. It's an important issue, and there may be other facets of it that come up. So I hope that when those issues do come up, we can continue to work together. I'll ask one last time if there's any further discussion on the item as amended. Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Alder Ferrara Santana.
Yes.
Alder Douglas.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
No Alder Brackeen. I vote yes as well. So the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, this is Alder Adam Marchand.
Alder Marchand, I recognize you.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
There's been a motion to adjourn and second discussion. Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Alder Ferrara Santana.
Yes.
Alder Douglas.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
No Alder Brackeen. I am yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.